Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of our series. My name is Cristina, and joining me today is Ms. Stuebing, the CEO of the Zebra Youth, Child and Advocacy Center. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm happy to be here, and first things first, you can just call me Emmy.
Awesome, well, thank you, Emmy. We wanted to just start off by asking, what do you do in common terms?
Okay, well, my title is that I'm the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the Zebra Center. I often describe myself as the head cheerleader here, though, because in my opinion, it's the team that does all the really important work. I just work behind the scenes to try to get the resources we need, the partners we need, the support we need, all of that. So that's what I do. I love my work.
And so what drew you into the nonprofit sector? Where did this all begin?
Well, it was purely accidental. I was in my last term at the U of A getting a BA in anthropology, and I started working in about February or March of that year for the Fort Edmonton Foundation. And I was hired because of my BA skills. Like, I could write, I could think critically, I was pretty good with people. And one of the first assignments I had when I started at Fort Edmonton was writing grants. And within my first 3 months, I got about over $100,000 in grants for the foundation. That felt pretty good to me, and I realized that I could make a career out of this. So I had originally thought I'd go back to school and get a second degree, but I realized, you can actually make a really nice living working in the nonprofit sector. And so I stuck with it, and I stayed there for about almost 4 years, and then the rest is history. I've worked for a few great causes, and I don't regret anything. The one thing I'm so glad I did is I took a chance, and I did this. So.
And so have you noticed that leadership is different in the nonprofit sector?
I think that leadership has to be very much walking the walk and talking the talk. Like in the nonprofit sector, sometimes there have been times in my role where I was an executive director of an organization, but there were maybe only 2 or 3 employees. So that means I was emptying garbage, I'm cleaning up messes. Like, you can't let ego get in the way. And so it's like we all pitch in and we all do the work. And that's something I've always committed to this whole time working in the nonprofit sector, is there's no job too small or too unimportant for anyone, especially leaders. We've got to lead by example.
Amazing. And how has this community surprised or inspired you over the years?
I'm so proud of what we create, and I think the thing that's really inspired me the most are just the great people. Like, I have met some incredible donors, volunteers, board members, and staff who just give so generously. They give their time, they give their talent, and sometimes they give their resources too, all because they really want to make a difference. And it just gives me such a great sense of community. And Edmonton really has a great community that really cares about kids, about animals, about seniors, about making our community the best it can be. And I just feel very privileged to have had the chance to get to meet some of the people that are being the change makers, often very quietly and behind the scenes.
If the Zebra Center had a mascot, what would it be?
Well, the obvious answer would be a zebra. And I'll just share that, the reason we're called the Zebra Center, because we support kids who've experienced abuse. Well, the Edmonton Child Abuse Center it's not a very nice name. So we're called the Zebra Center because in the wild, if there's a danger or threat, adult zebras will encircle around the young and the vulnerable to protect and camouflage them. So that's why we're zebra. And while that certainly would be a valid mascot for us, I think the mascot would be a dog. We are so fortunate at the Zebra Center to have 3 facility dogs. And these dogs provide comfort and courage and support to the kids and families that visit us here, as well as the staff and volunteers, because they're sort of taking on a lot of the trauma as well. And these dogs, they're just amazing. There have been times where a child might come to the Zebra Center and they're so traumatized and they're so scared they don't want to talk to anyone. But then left alone, they'll tell their whole story to a dog. And there have been times where a child just doesn't want to, just is clammed right up. But then a dog will come and just lie on their lap, and you can just see physically they relax. So the dogs who love unconditionally, who don't judge, and they're just here. They're just here to help. I think that would be our mascot. So
thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
In terms of a more personal aspect, what are some things that you cannot live without?
My name is Emmy, and I'm a shopaholic. I love not just buying things, but browsing. I love daydreaming. I love thinking about like getting gifts for friends and family. Like I'm one of those people I'm kind of buying gifts all year round, and then I forget what I got for people, and I'm giving them like 5,000 things at Christmas or their birthday. I love connecting people with like something that just fits their interest or their personality. Like I think if I could be a personal shopper for people, that would be a dream for me. But the other thing I couldn't live without, I would say, is my dog. I don't have children of my own, and I always say the first man I ever lived with was my first dog, Max. And for me, having a dog in my life has been just such a comfort. And in my work, I'm very, I need to be on. I need to be pretty social, and I love that. I love being around people, but then I kind of like to go home and just be quiet and recharge my batteries. And with dogs, you can do that. I don't have to be talking to my dog all night. We might go for a walk, but we might just walk in silence and just think, you know. So, so I'd say my dog is something else that I really can't. I love to shop, but I love my dog. So,
on that same note, how do you spend your free time?
Oh well, if puttering around the house could be a hobby, that would be my favorite thing. I love puttering in the yard. I love puttering around, like decorating my house. As you can probably tell by my crazy office, I have, one of my friends once described me. She said, Emmy, you're a very sensual person. And I was like, ooh. But what she meant is that I really like to have like visual sense. I like music on. Just before this interview, I had to turn my music off. Like I like a lot of stimulation, I guess. And I love sort of playing with that in or whatever space I'm in. So I think that's a real hobby of mine. So.
What is a quote or a principle that you live by?
Well, there's many things, but one thing, and I keep a little framed statement of this in my office, and it's especially helpful in working in the nonprofit sector. It's everything is figure-outable, and by having this, not only does it give hope. Like I consider myself an optimist, and I always feel that we can make things happen, but sometimes you hit roadblocks or speed bumps along the way. So everything is figure-outable, and I've said that to my team, and it's often when we're facing a challenge, people are like, everything's figure-outable, but it might also kind of gives you the permission, I think, to let go of what your expectation was, and like maybe by focusing on a solution that can achieve, it might not be the exact goal you wanted or the exact thing or the way you pictured it, but it will still get you across the finish line, and maybe you'll end up somewhere even better, like if whatever you're working on. So it kind of gives you permission to kind of let your expectations go a little bit and just figure something out and see how it will work.
Is there a particular moment or story that you could share that really sticks with you, something that hits differently?
Okay, as you know, I'm a dog person, and I had a little dog. He was a rescue and I named him Happy because that was my intent for him. I wanted him to be, he was a very scared boy. I think he'd been through a lot of trauma before he came to me. And one day we were visiting my family. I grew up in Red Deer, so we were in Red Deer. And I left Happy alone with my parents I had to run a couple errands. And Happy got spooked by my dad because Happy was just such a scared little guy. And he ended up finding the one hole in my parents' fence, and he got out of the yard, and he ended up being missing in Red Deer for 7 weeks. If you can imagine what it was like because then I had to go back to Edmonton. I had a job. Knowing that my little dog was missing in another city for 7 weeks was quite torturous. But what was really special was, I swear, half of Red Deer was looking for my dog. Like, thank goodness for social media and posters and things like that. And then finally, one day, he went missing at the end of August. And on October 22nd, 2017, a man called me, and he had found Happy. And what had happened is this man was walking his dog, and his dog wouldn't leave this shed alone. So the man finally looked under the shed. It was in a back alley somewhere in Red Deer, and there was Happy. We think he'd been hit by a car. And basically he had curled up, the vet says he'd curled up to die. Like, it was just a miracle that Happy was found by this man and his dog, but he still had his collar on, so that's how the man called me. Well, I zoomed down from Edmonton, picked up Happy, brought him back to Edmonton, took him to the vet emerge, and this may have not been the wisest decision, but I was just like, whatever it costs, let's just fix this little guy. And so I pulled out my credit card, and they took him in and did an evaluation, and basically his whole backside was broken. He had to get plates installed, and he had the top of his femur had to be removed. He was really broken. But what had happened is, because so many people had been looking for him, when they heard that he was found but was hurt, they're like, how can we help? And so a friend and my sister set up a GoFundMe, and it was like all to support Happy's medical expenses. And I've spent my whole career raising funds and doing things for other people. Suddenly now I was receiving charity, and I can tell you over $10,000 was raised to support my little dog Happy, and half of it came from total strangers, like people who just had followed his story in like social media or whatever. And what that really taught me, like, again, it just reinforced the kindness in people, when like I just couldn't believe that so many people would care about me and my dog. But it also was very humbling. It helped me to better understand how it feels to be receiving charity. I mean, some people who are in such need, they could be embarrassed. Like, there could be so many feelings, and so it helped me better empathize, I guess, for recipients of charity, which I think has made me a more sensitive fundraiser and like leader in the nonprofit sector. So, and I'm happy to say that my dog Happy ended up living for 7 more years. He didn't quite jump the same way as he used to, but he did make a really good recovery, and he had so many friends along the way. So it had a happy ending for that story, but it also taught me something about giving and receiving charity.
Thank you for sharing. That's great.
It's a bit of a long story, but I'm a dog person, so.
Alongside of that, what's a lesson that you've learned over the years?
A lesson that I have learned is, there's a few, but one I think that's really important is around accountability. And we're all human. Embrace our humanity, and if you mess up, it's okay. Like, especially if you can kind of recognize it, acknowledge it. Like, if you dropped a ball somewhere, or if you did something wrong, but then try to correct it and do better going forward. What do they say? I think Maya Angelou says, if you know better, you do better. But I think owning our mistakes and pledging to do better, that helps. It kind of helps to clear them away, I think. I think when people just brush it off, if they've hurt someone's feelings, or if they've disappointed someone, people might not get over it as easily if a person doesn't really take accountability for it. So I've just really learned that lesson along the way, because back in my 20s, I think I was trying to prove myself, and so I was like, I never wanted to admit if I was ever wrong. And now I'm always like, I'm just a girl, I'm just human, and I embrace all my mistakes, but I always try to do better then too. But own your mistakes and be accountable to those around you is, I think, a really important lesson.
What does change look like to you?
Change is constant. I mean, I think change can be scary. Even at the Zebra Center, like this past year was the most transformative year, because we were moving after 23 years in a downtown office building. We were finally building out and moving into a new, much larger, much more complex building to be working out of, and all that change. It was, I think it was exciting, but kind of scary and intimidating for a lot of people. But change is a constant, and I think that if you just make a plan for it and have some flexibility, and remember that everything is figure-outable, and that we'll get through this, it kind of gives us all a little bit of grace then, that things might not be perfect every step of the way, but we'll figure it out. So yeah.
My final question, if you could tell one thing to the people of Edmonton, what would it be?
Oh boy. I feel I think there's a lot of pride in Edmonton, but we're a pretty humble city, I think. And I would just say to more Edmontonians to stand up and be proud of what we have built already, but then keep that momentum going. Let's not stop now. I think Edmonton has grown into a pretty impressive community, but there's still so much potential and so much we could be doing. And there's new problems and challenges that need addressing now. So I think I would tell Edmontonians, good choice in living here, but let's all work together to make this the community that we all want. So just remind them that it truly takes a village, and let's all work together to do great things. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Emmy.
You're welcome.
Thank you to Emmy and to everyone at the Zebra Foundation for their impact on our community. We'll see you next week.